Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Heather. I'm a homeschooling mom of 3 kids, elementary and high school age. Today I'm going to be sharing the books that I have read in the month of March. Obviously there are still some days left in March, and so this will not be a complete March reading video, but I did want to share some of the books that I've read recently. I've read 9 books this month, which is not as many as I had thought that I would read. Many of them were physical books because we have been finishing up a lot of homeschool books, and I was kind of in a reading slump after I was in a reading slump after Crescent City 3. I finished that, and then I read some other fantasy books in the month of February, and they were not all that good, or they were the first in a series and the next book is not going to be out for much later. The Kindred's Curse series by Penn Cole, I thought that the 4th book was going to be out this month, so I read the 3rd book, or I finished the 3rd book, which was over 1,000 pages, and it kind of fell off for me at the end of that book. That was a February book. I did talk about it in my last books read video. So then at the end of March, I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston and Bride by Allie Hazelwood, and I love those 2 books. And then I came into March with another reading slump. I wasn't sure what to read, and I downloaded a bunch of free books on Kindle Unlimited. I do subscribe to Kindle Unlimited. I love it. I do a lot of fiction reading on Kindle Unlimited. I love how they carry so many indie authors. I think that that's amazing. And I don't necessarily want to purchase every single book that I read. I love having books in the house, but we have a lot of books. So so the first book that I read was Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover Tawwab, and I gave this book 4 stars. I thought it was really good. I read the book Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud many years ago, which I thought was amazing. This book had a lot of the same information in it, just worded much differently, obviously. There were some sections on technology, which I found very valuable because I spent a lot of time in March and in February and March working on this technology routine and figuring out how I want to use technology, how much access I want people to have of me on the internet. Because of my online business, I, for a very long time, have been very instant about my communication. When somebody asks a question, I almost always answer it immediately. And I've been trying to manage my tech time a little bit differently. And I talk a lot about that in my membership community. If you're interested, I would love for you to come over and check that out. So that one was really good. The next book that I read, actually, I've read 10 books. I'm looking at at the books that I have sitting around my office right now. So I have read 10 books. The next book is The Beginner's American History. This is one of Lucy's history books this year. We started it in the fall and finished it in March. So I think we started it later in the fall, but this I gave 4 stars. I thought it was really good. This was a new book for the Level D Sunlight, which I've used Level D Sunlight 2 times already with Emma and Jack, but that was many years ago. So this was an updated book that was added to the level. I'm not sure when, but we got it. It's just little biographies on important Americans. There's stuff on George Washington, and it kind of goes in chronological order. Eli Whitney, Robert Fulton, lots of different little biographies on important American figures. So I really enjoyed that book. It was a little dry. It was a little harder for her at 9 to understand. She is on the young end for that level, but we made it through. So that was good. The next book that I read was actually an audiobook called Marriage Meetings by Marcia Berger. And this book one of my members had mentioned the Art of Manliness podcast. We had been talking about weekly meetings, family meetings, and she had mentioned this marriage meetings podcast that she had listened to. And so I went to find that podcast and ended up seeing that he was interviewing this author. And so I haven't listened to the podcast yet, but I did I listened to the book on audio through Hoopla just to see if it was something that I would want to listen to. And I thought it was pretty good. I gave the book 4 stars. There were definitely some things in it that I didn't agree with, and just how to handle some things. I think she's a counselor, and some of the situations that she talked about in the book I thought were kind of a little more toxic and maybe needed something different than just a weekly marriage meeting. But overall, I really liked the ideas, and I liked the structure of how to run the meetings. And I'm interested to hear the podcast now because he relates it both to marriage meetings, weekly marriage meetings, and weekly family meetings. And the weekly family meetings is something that I'm hoping to work on as part of my goals this year. I have the family workbook from Cultivate What Matters, which I'm hoping to go through, and they have weekly meeting pages, blank pages throughout that book, one for every week of the year. So I'm really interested to see how to kind of integrate all of that information together. I'm not at that point yet. We're still in the preliminary stages, but I'm doing my research. The next book was What Lurks Between the Fates by Harper L. Woods. This is the third book in a series, and I only gave it 3 stars. It's kind of dragging out. I want to know what happens at the end. There were a lot of parts that just weren't that great for me. I probably will read the next book because I just want to see what happens, and I think it will be the last book. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. There were 2 books that I thought were going to come out this month that have been pushed out, Fate of the Sun King and Burn of the Everflame. And so I was reading other books in preparation for those, and then they didn't come out, so I didn't have anything to read. Then I read Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I requested that when it came out in January. I think it came out in January. I really, really enjoyed that book. I gave it 4 stars. There were several editing issues that I had with the book, and I might just be too picky. There were just some things that were some grammar mistakes and things that I just didn't think should have been with a traditionally published book, but that's just my opinion. And I am really excited about reading the second book in the series. I think that comes out in July. I really don't like starting series that aren't finished. I've learned this about myself. I do much better when the series is already finished. But I did really like Powerless. I thought it was good. The next book that I read was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, and I did not like that book. And I kind of broke my rule on the if it's less than 3 stars, DNF it. And I gave this 2.5 stars. I really, really thought that it was going to be different or it would get better because I had seen so many people rave about this book and just how amazing it was. And I love the premise. I thought the premise of the book was really good. It's about these 2 main characters. They are rivals at a newspaper, and there's a war going on. They are exchanging letters through this wardrobe, and there's a lot of magic involved. She doesn't know who she is writing to, but he knows that it's her that is writing to him and writing back and forth. And so it was really interesting at the beginning. I think there could have been a lot more world building, and I think the character development could have been much better. It was, I don't know, maybe like 500 pages, 450 pages. And I got to the end, and there were a lot of elements that seemed very similar to The Hating Game to me and Hunger Games. And those are 2 books, Hunger Games is a series. I love those books, but this was not as well executed to me as I think it could have been. I went online because I wanted to see what Ruthless Rivals, I think that's what the second book is, was about. And I read the bad reviews because I want to get like an honest feedback instead of all the people that get arcs that love the books. And it didn't sound like it was going to be something that I would enjoy, so I don't think that I'm going to read it. I may go to the library and read the end just to see what the end is because I'm one of those people, but overall, I do not recommend it. I think it's really funny that this book, Divine Rivals, was marketed so heavily to people that read Fourth Wing because I do not think that they have anything to do with one another. I really feel like Divine Rivals was almost more historical fiction based, like it seemed like maybe World War I, and even though it was like in a fantastical setting, it just didn't seem, it was not great for me. The next book that we finished was the Lewis and Clark Expedition. This is also for Lucy's History. This is the third time that I've read this book. I really like it. It just kind of goes through the journey of Lewis and Clark, takes out some of the more troubling aspects, I think, which is good because, you know, that's necessary for a 9-year-old. The next book that I finished was this World War II book, this Uncle Eric book with my older 2 kids. Loved it. I really, really love the World War I book as well. This is not part of the level 300 history that I'm doing with Emma. This is actually part of the level 100 history. When I read this, when Emma did level 100, I didn't like it because it referred to my previous letters a lot, and we hadn't read the previous letters because the World War I book was not scheduled until level 300. So after we read the World War I book this fall, I definitely wanted to continue on with the series. So this was really, really good. He does talk about his bias at the beginning of the book, which I really appreciate, because I think that all people that write history books ought to disclose their bias ahead of time so you understand where they're coming from. I really enjoyed it. I'm actually interested in getting some of the other Uncle Eric books in this series. I think there's 11 books in this series, but there are several relating to economics. Emma has not taken an economics course in high school, and typically that's like a half-credit course. So I'm considering piecing one together for next year for her. And there are several of the Uncle Eric books that I think would be interesting to add to that. So we may get some of those, but I definitely enjoyed that. The next book I read was Chill and Prosper by Denise Duffield Thomas, and she is an online content creator. She has a lot of money workshops and things like that. I love business books, and I haven't read any newer business books lately. So this one I gave 4 stars. I thought it was pretty good. Some of the information was not as applicable to me. Some of it was really good. I really enjoyed the case studies that are in here from different clients that she's had, and how she kind of funnels you through all of these different steps. I did enjoy the writing. I thought it was very easy to read. So if you are a business owner, I definitely recommend reading this book. I thought it was pretty good. I gave it 4 stars. So then the last book that I have is Slow Productivity, which I'm not quite done with yet. I'm still taking notes on it, but it's really, really good. It focuses on slow productivity. So right off the bat, he says, slow productivity, a philosophy for organizing knowledge work efforts in a sustainable and meaningful manner based on the following 3 principles: do fewer things, work at a natural pace, obsess over quality. He talked a lot about the slow food movement and how that kind of developed. And because I really, really love the slow food movement, when I saw slow productivity, that is exactly what I thought that he was going for, was kind of not copying, but taking inspiration from the slow food movement. I think that it's really an interesting book. I think that he's trying to make it applicable to businesses, which I think is a little bit harder to manage because you have so many expectations on your time when you're working for somebody else as opposed to working for yourself. There is a good bit about working for yourself in this book. I'm not finished, like I said. I'm hoping that he does deep dive a little bit more on more like entrepreneurial type careers, people, because I think that that's valuable. But so far, I really, really enjoy it. He had a whole story about Jane Austen in there, which really made me happy, talking about slow food. And honestly, the book itself is a lot of the same things that I have been saying for years. And so it's really just nice to hear it from somebody else that is a professional writing about the same things. It's validation when you read some of the things that you are constantly talking about in your own life. So I'm not quite done with that book, but I will be done with it before the end of March, because like I said, I'm filming this a little bit early. So those are my books. My reading has fallen off quite a bit this month, and I thought that I was reading a lot more, and it is possible that I read some Kindle Unlimited books and then just returned them and never recorded it, because I read every day, and I only read like 3 fiction books. So it was just a little strange for me. But I'm feeling pretty good about my reading this year. I am taking a lot more time to read during the day, which is something that I wanted to focus on this year, because forever, I read at night after my kids go to bed. Not homeschool books, obviously, but books for pleasure are always at night, and books like nonfiction, personal development type books are always first thing in the morning during my AM routine. So that's where we're at with reading for the month. I'm feeling really good about my reading. I would like to read more. I'm just about done with my goals reading list, and so I need to come up with some new lists. I did talk about this a little bit in my goals video for March, that I was not going to do a fiction TBR because I have like a new release section on in my book journal every month, and or I can show it to you. And that's where I write new releases. There isn't a whole lot of like backlog books that, so I write down the new releases and then try to read them in that month. But there isn't like there aren't a lot of authors where I haven't already read most of their backlist if it's an author that I love. And so I don't really have any books that I'm like, oh, I need to read that book. I wish that I had read that book. When I come across books, like from watching YouTube videos or Instagram or whatnot, I will go in and download samples or download the book if it's available on Kindle Unlimited. But I haven't seen as many books lately because I've been focusing on new releases. So, and I did kind of go through a whole slump because I was reading all of Sarah J. Maas in the fall and through January leading up to Crescent City 3 coming out, and then I just kind of crashed and burned. I think I just need to look for maybe a different genre than the fantasy that I've been reading. Maybe I just need to shift into some different book types to move forward and get out of this reading slump. But those are my books for March. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about any of the books, let me know in the comments, or you can email me. My contact form is always in the description box. I would love to hear what you are reading, or if you have recommendations for me. I'm always up for recommendations on any type of book, except for horror. I don't do horror books, although I say that, and I read all of the original Vampire Diaries books by, what is her name? It's by L.J. Smith. Before I watched the series, I read the books first and then saw that there was a series, and so I thought, oh, I'll watch the series. The books are very different than the series, but the books are good if you like that kind of thing. They are kind of, I think they are under horror, but when I say horror, I mean Stephen King. I do not like Stephen King at all. It's just way too much and not necessary. But pretty much everything else I will read. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.